Hello, and welcome to Haunted Slumber. Before we begin, take a moment to leave a comment and tell me where you're listening from. I always enjoy reading them. If you enjoy slow, haunting stories that gently carry you towards sleep, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Now, get comfortable, let your body grow still, and allow the sounds of the outside world to slowly fade into silence. Tonight, as the night grows quieter, the shadows begin to whisper, and another haunting story unfolds. So close your eyes, listen carefully, and let yourself drift into haunted slumber. Story 1, it started as a simple father and son fishing trip. That was all it was supposed to be. We would rent a small cottage by the water, wake up early, cast our lines before the sun got too high, and maybe spend one last quiet weekend together before everything changed. It was Dylan's final summer before college, and if I am being honest, we had never had the kind of father and son relationship I once imagined we would have. He was a quiet kid, not just shy, but locked away inside himself. His mother had always been better at reaching him than I was, and even she had trouble sometimes. With me, it often felt almost impossible. I could sit beside him for an hour and get only 3 words out of him. Still, I loved him more than anything in the world. So when I thought about our last weekend before he left, I knew I could not force something loud or crowded on him. He did not want a theme park, a baseball game, or some big father and son adventure. He liked quiet. He liked space. So I thought I knew exactly where to take him. The Cape in the off-season was almost empty. The moment we stepped out of the van, the silence hit us before the smell of salt and seaweed did. The whole place felt abandoned. Even the gulls sounded distant, their cries softened by the thick fog that hung over the beach like wet cloth. I pointed toward the water and nudged Dylan lightly. "Head down there for a minute," I said. "Take a look around while I unpack." He did not answer, but he nodded. Then he popped one AirPod into his ear and started walking toward the beach. I watched him go. He had grown tall too fast, and he still moved like he was not fully used to his own body. Long legs, narrow shoulders, careful steps. The fog swallowed him slowly until he was only a thin shape near the water. Then he disappeared completely. I grabbed both of our duffel bags and turned toward the cottage. The place looked ancient. It was probably from the middle of the last century, but the moment I stepped inside, I felt like no one had stayed there since then. The air was stale. The floorboards groaned under my feet. When I dropped the bags near the entryway, dust lifted from the floor in a thick cloud and hit my face. I coughed hard. There must have been sand mixed into the dust because it felt like tiny pieces of glass scraping down my throat. I coughed until my chest hurt and my eyes watered. By the time I managed to breathe again, my throat felt raw and torn. I shut the door and looked around, wondering how anyone could rent out a place in that condition. The cottage looked like it had not seen a guest in years, and certainly not a cleaner in decades. But I tried to see the bright side. If the cottage was this forgotten, then maybe the beach was forgotten too. Maybe no one had fished there in a long time. That meant the water might be full. More for us, I thought. I grabbed the rods and walked down toward the beach. "Hey, Dylan," I called, though my voice came out hoarse. "This is a perfect spot." "What?" he called back, touching his AirPod and squinting through the fog. "The beach," I said. "Nobody's been here in ages. We'll have our pick of the fish." I tossed him a rod. He caught it badly, almost dropping it before getting a grip. Looking back now, I know he was not excited. I could see it in his face, in the way he held the rod, in the weak smile he gave me. Dylan did not care about fishing. He was trying to act interested for me, and I knew that. I chose to ignore it. Fishing had been important to my father and me. It had been important to his father before him. I wanted it to mean something to Dylan too. Even if he did not love the sport, I thought maybe he could enjoy the quiet. There is something peaceful about the sea, something about standing near it that makes even the heaviest thoughts feel smaller. That was how I justified bringing him there. But there is no way to justify what happened after. We stood side by side on the beach with our lines cast into the open water. The fog slowly moved around us. The waves were calm at first, rolling in softly, one after another. Then I felt a tug. The bobber vanished under the surface with such force that the rod almost left my hands. I tightened my grip and dug my bare toes into the wet sand. Whatever was on the other end was strong. Too strong. For a second, I thought I had hooked the biggest fish of my life. Then I realized I was not pulling it in. It was pulling me. "Dad," Dylan shouted. My feet slid across the shallows as if I had been tied to a moving boat. Dylan grabbed my arm with one hand and the rod with the other. "Dill." I shouted over the sudden sound of the wind. The clouds above the water were getting darker, and the waves were growing rough. "I need you to reel." I let go of the knob and wrapped an arm around Dylan's back to steady us both. He grabbed the reel and started turning it as fast as he could. "I've got it," he shouted. Sea spray hit his face. The ocean had gone from calm to angry in seconds, but Dylan held on, and I held on to him. Then, with a loud crash, the water broke apart around whatever we had caught. A wave threw us backward. My back hit the sand hard, knocking the air from my lungs. For a moment, I could only lie there, dazed, staring at the sky. Then I heard a sound beside me. A wail. "Dylan," I sat up fast, terrified, only to see my son laughing. Really laughing. I had not seen him laugh like that in years. "Nice catch," he wheezed between laughs, holding up the rod. Hanging from the hook was a shell. Just a shell, a normal-looking conch shell, pale and smooth, shining slightly as sunlight broke through the clouds above us. The storm clouds were parting. The sun was coming out. I looked at the tiny shell that had somehow caused all that chaos, and then I started laughing too. We lay on the beach for a while after that, both of us staring up at the sky while the waves crashed nearby. The sun came out fully and covered the shore in gold. For a few minutes, everything felt warm. Everything felt possible. "I'm sorry, bud," I said quietly. "For what?" Dylan asked. He sounded genuinely confused. "That we didn't catch a single thing." I stopped, then corrected myself. "That we didn't catch a single living thing all day." Dylan scoffed. I sat up and looked at him. "What? You still think I care about fishing, don't you?" he said. There it was, that sharp Dylan tone. The little wall he always threw up between us. For a second I felt that familiar flash of frustration and thought, why do I even bother? I stood up and started walking back toward the cottage. "Hey, Dad," Dylan called from the sand. I stopped. "Yeah?" He was still lying there, looking up at the sky. "Today was a good day," he said. I smiled. "Grab your treasure," I said, nodding toward the shell, "and let's head inside." I heard him jump up behind me and follow. "You know," I said as we walked, "people say you can hear the ocean inside those things." "Bullshit," he laughed, lifting the shell to his ear. "I don't hear any." He stopped. "Told you," I said. "Pretty cool, right?" He did not answer. I turned toward him, and my stomach dropped. Dylan was standing completely still with the shell pressed to his ear. Not alert still, not listening still, frozen still, like his body had become stone. "Dylan," I said, stepping closer. I waved my hand in front of his face. "What's going on?" His eyes began to bulge. Slowly, horribly, they pushed forward in their sockets. The whites filled with red lines. Blood vessels burst. His eyes looked glassy at first, then cloudy, as if milk had been poured behind them. I shouted his name and grabbed his shoulders. I shook him, but he did not move. It was like trying to shake a statue. His body looked like my son's body, but it felt solid and lifeless under my hands. A seizure, I thought. No, a stroke. I did not know what to do. I pulled at his shirt. I tried to lift him. I shouted into his ear. Nothing worked. Then I noticed the shell still pressed tight to his right ear. His fingers were wrapped around it so hard that his knuckles had gone white. The dry skin had split across them, leaving thin red cuts. I pulled out my phone and dialed 911 with shaking hands. I paced in the gravel driveway while it rang, never taking my eyes off him. Then Dylan moved. It was not a normal movement. It was slow and cold and careful. He lowered the shell from his ear. Dylan. I dropped the phone and ran to him. His eyes sank back into place. The cloudy look faded. He blinked once, then looked at me as if nothing had happened. "What just happened?" I asked. "Are you okay? You looked like you were having a stroke." He said only one thing. "I'm fine." I hated that word. I had heard it too many times. "How was school?" "Fine." "How did the test go?" "Fine. Are you okay?" Fine. It had taken me years to understand that fine was not an answer. It was a curtain. Behind it was pain, fear, anger, and all the things Dylan did not know how to say, so I did not believe him. 911 is on the way, I said, looking toward my phone on the ground. The screen was cracked, but the call was still active. We're going to find out what happened. No. Dylan snapped. His eyes darted between me and the phone. "I'm fine," he said quickly. "Really, I leave for college in 2 days. I don't want to spend this weekend with doctors and needles. I want to spend it with you. I want to spend it here." Those words hit me harder than they should have. I had waited 18 years to hear my son say something like that. I had spent so long wishing he wanted to be with me. So when he said it, I listened. I picked up the phone. The operator's voice came through, worried and sharp. "Hello, sir? Are you in any danger?" I looked at Dylan. He looked healthy again. Pale, maybe, but normal. "Sorry," I said into the phone. My son scared me for a second, but he says he's okay now. The operator started warning me about calling without an emergency, but I ended the call before she finished. Dylan let out a long breath. His shoulders dropped with relief. "You're welcome," I said. Then I looked at the shell in his hand. I had another reason for calling it off. A strange idea had started forming in my mind. Maybe whatever happened had nothing to do with Dylan's health. Maybe it was the shell. Maybe something inside it had stung him. Maybe some kind of sea creature, a jellyfish or something with venom, had been trapped inside. It sounded ridiculous, but it was the only explanation I had. "But Dill," I said, "if you're not going to let doctors check you, then I need to check something myself. Hand me the shell." Dylan went pale. He clutched the conch to his chest with both hands. No. It was not shouted, but it was firm. Breathless, almost afraid. I wanted to know why he needed it so badly. I needed to know. I could have pushed. I could have grabbed it from him. But I had been told once, during a hard time in Dylan's life that pushing a teenager only creates more distance. A counselor named Dr. Howard had told me to let Dylan come to me, not force him open. At that moment, I hated Dr. Howard. Why not? I asked, holding out my open hand. Dylan said nothing. He walked to the cottage, opened the door, and went inside with the shell pressed against his chest like a child holding a blanket. I followed him. Dylan. I called. I tried to sound angry and strong, but my voice came out thin and sad. A bedroom door slammed. I stood there in the dusty living room and let my shoulders fall. The rental guide had said not to take anything from the cottage, but after a few minutes of searching the cabinets, I found a bottle of Jack Daniels. I took it and told myself I deserved it. I sat in the only chair in the living room, a rough linen thing that scratched my legs, and poured myself a drink. I thought about the day. For one moment on that beach, I had felt like Dylan was finally opening up to me. I had seen him laugh. I had heard him say it was a good day. Then it was gone. Again, why did he always close himself off? When would he stop walking carefully around me like I was something dangerous? I thought when, not why, because I already knew why. When Dylan was younger, I hurt him. It happened once. One stupid, terrible mistake. It was my wife's birthday. I had drunk too much at dinner. We came home, and I was getting ready to cut the cake I had ordered for her. Dylan was little then. He reached out to steal a bit of frosting from the top. I told him to stop. He did not. So I grabbed his arm and pulled him away. Not hard, or at least I did not think it was hard. Then I heard a soft crack, like a twig breaking under someone's foot. My wife screamed and ran to him. Dylan's arm hung limp in her hands. I was horrified. I apologized over and over, but it did not matter. She left me later that night, and I do not blame her. I do not blame her for the custody arrangement either. I promised I would never lay a finger on Dylan again, and I kept that promise, but my drinking was out of control then. Weekends only was probably the right decision. That was why I needed this trip to be perfect. We did not have a week before college. We had 2 days. 2 short days for the ocean to fix everything, and for one bright moment on the sand, I thought it had. Now it was ruined. At some point, I stopped using the glass and drank straight from the bottle. What happened? I kept thinking. What happened to our day? One moment, my son had been a lighthouse, smiling in the fog. The next, he was locked away again, worse than before. It was the shell. It had to be. The shell that had pulled like something alive from under the water. The shell that froze him in place when he held it to his ear. The shell he would not let me touch. I just wanted to look at it. I need to go look, I thought. But before I could stand, the empty bottle slipped from my hand and hit the hardwood floor. Sleep took me before I heard it stop rolling. I woke to the sound of a creaking door. A terrible feeling opened in my stomach before I was even fully awake. I lifted my head and looked toward the front door. It was wide open. The night was pouring into the cottage. Dylan? I called. No answer. I stood too fast and had to grab a table to keep from falling. My head was pounding. My mouth tasted like old whiskey and salt. I did not check his room. I already knew he would not be there. I stumbled out into the night. The fog had returned. It covered everything, thicker than before. As I moved toward the shore, I saw a shape ahead. Dylan. He was walking toward the water. I could not see what he was holding, but I did not need to. I ran. Dylan. He did not respond. As I got closer, I saw the shell pressed to his ear. It was glowing. Maybe it was moonlight. Maybe I wanted to believe that. But I knew what I saw. The shell was giving off its own pale light. Dylan. I reached him just as one of his bare feet touched the water. "Stop, you're going to drown." He kept walking. His movements were stiff and unnatural, like a puppet being dragged forward by invisible strings. I grabbed his arm and pulled, but it did nothing. He was skinny, but he was 18 now. He could overpower me, and in that moment, he was moving with a strength that did not feel human. "Dylan, stop moving." I pulled harder between gasping breaths. He did not even look at me. Then I looked at the shell again and remembered my drunken thought from earlier. Whatever was happening was because of that thing. I had to get it away from him. We were already waist deep in the freezing water. My legs were going numb. I grabbed the shell and tried to pull it from his hand, but his grip was locked tight. The water rose higher as he kept walking. I tried to pry his fingers off one at a time. The harder I pulled, the tighter they seemed to hold. Waves splashed against our necks. My feet lifted off the bottom for one terrifying second, then touched sand again. I did not know how long he had before the water covered his face. I grabbed his index finger and pulled with everything I had. Snap. I knew that sound. I had heard it once before, years ago, on my wife's birthday. It was the sound I had sworn I would never hear again. The sound of my son breaking. I cried out. Dylan's finger lifted from the shell, but it was bent backward, pointing toward the sky. For one moment, the moonlight showed the broken bone pushing through the skin. Then blood burst from the wound and sprayed across his face. His expression did not change. His mouth stayed closed. But a single tear slid down his cheek, cutting a clear line through the blood. He kept walking, one stiff step after another. I grabbed his middle finger. Tears ran down my face. Since Dylan could not scream, I screamed for him. "Please forgive me." Snap. The water was at my chin now. More blood spilled from his hand. This break was worse, twisted and ugly, and the blood came in sharp bursts. I thought of the cake. I thought of the way Dylan looked at me after I broke his arm. I thought of how he had looked at me every year since then, like he was afraid of me. Maybe he was right to be. I can't. I choked. Then a wave hit my open mouth. I coughed at the salt, then gagged when I tasted something metallic. My son's blood. Then Dylan's head went under. In that moment, everything else vanished. My drinking, my divorce, my guilt, even my ex-wife disappeared from my mind. There was only my son. The water went over my head too. Snap. Even underwater I heard it. Blood floated around us in dark red clouds. I almost lost my grip, but I grabbed Dylan's shirt and held on. That was when I saw something impossible. I was kicking and fighting to stay below the surface, but Dylan was walking. His feet stayed planted on the ocean floor as if they were weighted down. He moved through the water like gravity belonged only to him. Fear turned into anger. I pulled again. Snap, his ring finger tore off completely in my hand. I screamed underwater, though only the fish could hear it. I threw the finger away, refusing to watch the red trail it left behind. Black spots crawled into my vision. My lungs burned. I grabbed his last finger, the pinky. I had never cried underwater before. It is strange, because tears in the ocean are both salt, and in that moment I could not tell the difference. If you ask me now, I will tell you the whole ocean is made of tears. Snap, Dylan's hand loosened. The shell drifted free. His eyes sank back into his face. His body changed. The trance broke. His feet lifted from the sand, and suddenly he was only my son again, floating in the dark water. I reached for him. He reached back. We held each other and kicked toward the surface. When we broke through, I gasped so hard it hurt. The moonlight danced across the waves in broken shapes. My head spun, but none of that mattered. "Breathe for me, Dill," I said. "Breathe." His chest rose and fell. He was alive. He was conscious. "Dylan," I said, treading water beside him. "Are you okay?" I wanted him to tell me everything. I wanted him to explain what had happened, what the shell was, why it had taken him into the sea. Instead, he said, "I'm fine." "God damn it, Dylan," I cried, shaking him. "You have to talk to me." All my failed attempts to reach him came crashing down on me. All the times I had sat beside his bed in silence, waiting for him to say something. All the times he would not open up. It was my fault. I had done that to him. "Dylan, I'm sorry," I said. "I've said it before, but I'll say it again. I'll say it every day for the rest of our lives, if I have to. But you need to understand that everything I've done since that day has been because I wanted to protect you. From me, from bullies, from anyone who might hurt you. I don't know what this thing is or what it wants, but it is not trying to help you. I am. Please, Dylan, I'm begging you. Talk to me." For a moment, he said nothing. Then he paddled toward me as best he could with his broken hand and hugged me. I wrapped my arms around him, and we floated there in the freezing water, both shaking, both crying. "It's the shell," he said against my shoulder. I nodded. "Tell me everything." And he did. "There's a voice," Dylan whispered. His throat was rough from seawater. A beautiful voice inside the shell. "It sings to me. It's so sweet that all I want to do is listen." I stared at him, unable to speak. "She sings about the things she wants me to do," he said, "and when she sings, I want to do them. It feels good to listen." A new fear bit into me. "What did she tell you to do?" I asked. Dylan looked at the dark water around us. "She said she wanted to meet me," he said. "But she couldn't do it in daylight." I looked toward the shore. Through the fog, it looked impossibly far away. "She told me to come back at night," Dylan said. Before I could even respond, he was pulled under. 1 second he was in front of me. The next, his head vanished beneath the surface like a fishing bobber being yanked down. "Dylan." I spun in the water, splashing wildly, searching for him. Only ripples remained where he had been. I dove under. The salt burned my eyes, but I forced them open. I searched through the dark water, through the moving shadows and broken moonlight. Then I saw it. Far below me, the ocean no longer looked like water. It looked like space, a deep, endless black, empty of stars. And inside that darkness, something moved. A tail. It was thick and scaled, sweeping slowly from side to side. The movement was almost hypnotic. For a second, I did not notice what it was dragging. Then I saw Dylan's limp body beside it. After that, everything went black. The next thing I remember is coughing. I was lying on my side on the beach while 2 men in red uniforms leaned over me. They were talking about oxygen, but I could barely hear them over the water coming out of my lungs. I coughed up seawater, seaweed, and sand. Then the memories returned. "Dylan," I gasped, grabbing one of the men by the ankle. "Where's my son?" "That's what we were about to ask you," another voice said. A man in a black uniform stepped onto the beach. A badge shined on his chest in the bright morning sun. Then I saw my ex-wife behind him. She was holding the empty bottle of Jack Daniels. Her face was full of tears and hate. "What did you do to our boy?" she asked. I looked down at my hands. Dried blood was caked under my fingernails. "You don't understand," I said, trying to stand, but I almost fell. "I didn't. It was. You can explain at the station," the officer said. Cold metal closed around my wrists. I could spend thousands of words telling you about the trial, but I do not have much time left. I am writing this from a cell at Barnstable County Correctional Facility. It has been 6 months since Dylan disappeared. The authorities are calling it a presumed drowning. There was a canceled 911 call from earlier that day. My blood alcohol level was high. My past with Dylan was on record. For a while, they wanted to charge me with manslaughter, but they never found a body. So tomorrow, I am being released. My ex-wife would not speak to me for the first month. Eventually, she started to believe my story. Maybe believing in a monster was easier than believing our son was dead. I am grateful for that, even if I do not deserve it. I still do not know what happened to Dylan. I do not know if he is alive. I do not know where that thing took him. But now that the case is being dropped, there is only one way to find out. My ex-wife talked to someone at the evidence locker. When I get home tomorrow, something will be waiting for me. A conch shell. Still sealed in its plastic evidence bag. Neither of us knows what will happen next, but I have nothing left. Tomorrow, I will walk out of this prison and into another one, a house without my son. Then I will take the shell out of the bag. I will lift it carefully to my ear, and when I do, I need you to do one thing for me. Pray, Story 2. It started on a random Thursday night, the kind of night that should have meant nothing. I had moved into the apartment only a week earlier. It was small, old, and run down, but it was mine. For the first time in my life, I had a place where nobody could tell me to clean up after them, lower my music, explain where I was going, or ask why I had come home late. It was not a nice apartment, not even close, but I had signed the lease myself. My name was on the paperwork. My boxes were in the corners. My clothes were in the closet. That was enough to make it feel like freedom. The building itself was the problem. It looked tired from the outside, with cracked brick, peeling paint around the windows, and a front door that never fully closed unless you slammed it. The hallway always smelled like old carpet, boiled food, and something damp hiding under the floorboards. My apartment was on the second floor, near the end of the hall, where the lights flickered if someone used the elevator. The place had thin walls, uneven floors, and pipes that groaned whenever anyone above me turned on water. Still, the rent was low, and I told myself that was the price of independence. The noise started the first night. I had just finished unpacking enough boxes to find my sheets, my phone charger, and the one clean towel I owned. I was lying on my mattress, which I had pushed against the wall because there was nowhere else for it to go. I was tired in that deep moving day way, where every muscle feels bruised and your brain is too worn out to think. I was almost asleep when I heard it. Scrape, scrape, thump. It came from inside the wall beside my bed. At first I thought it was a pipe. Then I thought it was a rat. Then I tried not to think about it at all. The sound came again, slow and steady. Scrape, scrape, thump. It did not sound like normal building noise. It sounded too close, too careful, like something was moving behind the drywall with a purpose. The next morning I told my landlord. He was an old man with yellowed eyes, a wet cough, and the kind of face that always looked like someone had just accused him of stealing. He stood in my doorway with one hand on his hip and the other holding a ring of keys. "Just old plumbing in an old building, kid," he rasped. "What do you expect for this kind of rent?" Then he gave me a look like I was trying to cheat him out of money by asking for a wall that did not sound alive. I wanted to argue. but I had only been there one day, and I needed the place. So I thanked him, shut the door, and tried to pretend I believed him. But the noise came back every night. Always after dark. Always from the same spot behind the mattress. Sometimes it was soft, like fingernails running over wood. Sometimes it was heavier, like a fist hitting the inside of the wall. It followed a rhythm that made it worse. Random sounds can be explained away. Old buildings make noise. Pipes knock. Wood settles. Animals move around. But rhythm feels like a message. Scrape, scrape, thump, scrape, scrape, thump. By the end of the week, I was exhausted. I had started sleeping with earbuds in, but the sound came through anyway. It was not loud exactly, it was just close. It crawled under music, under podcasts, under white noise. Even when I could not hear it clearly, I could feel it through the mattress, a small vibration in the wall beside my leg. That Thursday night, I gave up on sleep early. I was lying in bed, scrolling through my phone without really looking at anything. Instagram showed me the same kind of posts it always did. Old classmates on vacations. People smiling in bright kitchens. Friends of friends standing on beaches, drinking coffee in sunlight, holding hands with people who looked like they had never lived in a place with mold around the window frame. Everyone looked warm, successful, clean, and far away. Beside me, the wall scraped and pounded. I sighed and kept scrolling. I had gotten used to pretending the noise was normal. That was what scared me later. Not the sound itself, but how quickly a person can adjust to something wrong if they have no better choice. Then the scraping stopped. The silence was sudden. Complete, it cut through the room so sharply that I lowered my phone and turned my head toward the wall. For 1 second, nothing happened. Then, something cold touched my leg. It was not a breeze. It was not cloth. It was small, firm, and freezing. I looked down. A pale human finger had pushed through a narrow gap in the drywall beside my mattress. It rested against my bare thigh like it had been reaching for me and had finally found skin. For a moment, I could not move. My mind refused to accept what my eyes were seeing. Then the finger bent slightly, pressing into my leg. I screamed. I scrambled backwards so fast, I nearly fell off the mattress. My phone slipped from my hand and bounced onto the blanket. My heart was beating so hard it hurt. I backed into the middle of the room, staring at the wall. The finger was gone. The gap was still there. A thin, dark slit in the drywall, no wider than a finger. I had never noticed it before. Maybe it had been hidden by the shadow of the mattress. Maybe it had not existed until that moment. I stood there in my underwear, shaking, trying to decide what a normal person was supposed to do when a finger came through their wall. Call the landlord? Call the police? Move out? Laugh and tell myself I was half asleep? Instead, I did the stupidest thing possible. I moved closer. Fear and disbelief pushed me forward. I had to know what I had seen. I picked up my phone with trembling hands and turned on the flashlight. The white beam cut across the room and landed on the slit. I knelt beside the mattress, leaned in, and brought my eye close to the opening. I expected darkness. Maybe a hollow space between the walls. Maybe insulation. Maybe the flash of a rat's eye, which somehow would have been a relief. That was not what I saw. On the other side of the narrow opening was flesh, a smooth, pale mass pressed tight against the gap. It looked like human skin, but wrong. Too smooth, too stretched, too heavy. It did not have pores or hair or marks. It filled the space behind the drywall completely. as if someone's body had been packed inside the wall and pressed flat against it. I stopped breathing. The skin twitched, then a line opened across it. At first, it was only a thin split. Then it widened, stretching from one side of the small gap to the other. The flesh pulled apart in a slow, wet motion, forming a mouth. Not a normal mouth. There were no lips, no face around it, just a jagged black opening tearing through that pale surface. It opened wider and wider, as if it was laughing, without sound. I fell backward and dropped my phone. The flashlight spun across the floor, throwing wild shadows over the ceiling. I tried to get up, but my legs would not obey me. All I could do was stare at the wall. The hole began to change. The drywall did not crack. It did not break in pieces. It softened. The edges of the slit sagged and melted like wax near a flame. White plaster ran downward in thick, slow streams, but it did not fall to the floor. It folded into itself, widening the hole. The wall bent inward and outward at the same time, creating a dark opening beside my bed that should not have fit inside the apartment at all. The room grew colder. From the center of that darkness, a head began to push through. Long black hair came first. It was wet-looking and oily, hanging in heavy strands. Then a pale forehead. Then the rest of the face. Except it was not a face. There were no eyes, no nose, no cheeks shaped like a person's. Just smooth, tight skin stretched over the suggestion of bone, with that wide, jagged mouth cutting across the lower half. The mouth hung open in a silent grin. The head tilted slowly, as if it was listening to the room with something other than ears. I tried to run, but my body had locked in place. I was on the floor, one hand pressed against the carpet, my back against a cardboard box I still had not unpacked. My mouth opened, but nothing came out. The thing turned toward me. Its blank face snapped in my direction. Then the skin began to move. At first, it was only a ripple under the surface, like something crawling beneath wet clay. The smooth flesh tightened and swelled. Small shapes pushed outward, then sank back. The thing's head twitched. Its mouth stayed open, but no sound came from it. I watched, frozen, as a nose pushed through the blank skin. My nose. Then a jawline formed. My jawline. Cheekbones rose. Eyelids split open. Eyes pressed outward, wet and blinking. My eyes. The transformation was horrible because it was not perfect at first. My face appeared in pieces, swelling through the blank flesh like a mask being built from the inside. The skin stretched and shaped itself, correcting small mistakes as it went. The nose sharpened, the mouth narrowed, the eyes settled into place. Within seconds, the thing in the wall had my exact face. It smiled with my mouth. The sight broke something inside me. I pushed myself backward, scraping my palms on the floor, but there was nowhere to go. The thing leaned farther out of the opening. Its long hair hung over its shoulders. Its new eyes, my eyes, fixed on me with a bright, empty hunger. Then it spoke. The voice was mine, not an imitation, not close. Mine, but the way it used my voice was wrong. The words came out hollow and flat, like a recording played through a broken speaker. Thank you for taking my place. Its smile widened, wider than my smile could ever go. The skin at the corners of its mouth stretched until I thought it would tear. Before I could move, its hand shot out of the opening and wrapped around my ankle. The fingers were cold and hard, stronger than anything that thin should have been. The moment they touched my skin, dizziness crashed through me. The room tipped sideways. My vision blurred. I tried to kick, but my leg felt far away, like it belonged to someone else. The thing pulled. The last thing I saw before everything went black was my own face grinning at me from the wall. When I opened my eyes, there was no light. At first, I thought I had gone blind. Then I realized I was standing upright in a narrow space. I could not move more than a few inches in any direction. Dust filled my nose, or where my nose should have been. Something rough scratched my shoulders. My hands shot out in panic and hit solid wood on one side and cold plasterboard on the other. I was inside the wall. For a few seconds, my mind refused to understand it. I pushed forward, but there was drywall in front of me. I pushed backward, but there was more wood and plaster. I reached up and felt old insulation hanging like dead hair. The air was thick, stale, and filled with the dry taste of dust. Then my fingers found the tiny hole. It was in the wall in front of me, no wider than one finger. The same gap I had looked through from my room. I tried to scream. Nothing came out. My mouth would not open. I brought my hands to my face and felt why. My nose was flattening, not broken, not pressed down, but sinking into my skull like soft wax. My lips were sealed shut beneath a layer of smooth skin. My eyelids were thick and heavy, closing over my eyes even though I fought to keep them open. I clawed at my face, but my fingers slid over skin that was becoming tighter by the second. My features were disappearing. I pounded on the wall. I kicked. I scraped with my nails until they should have broken, but I felt no pain. I tried to shout again and again, but my mouth was gone. I had no voice. I had no face. All I had was the narrow space, the dust, the wood, and the tiny hole. On the other side of the wall, I heard movement in my apartment. Footsteps. My footsteps. Drawers opening. Water running. A phone buzzing. My own voice humming softly, as if whatever had taken my place was already comfortable living my life. I pressed my fingers through the slit, reaching for the room I had lost. No one touched them. No one saw. Time stopped meaning anything after that. I do not know how long I stayed inside the wall. Days, weeks, months, maybe longer. I never got hungry. I never got thirsty. I never slept, not really. I only waited in the dark. Sometimes I heard people in the room beyond the wall. Sometimes I heard the landlord's voice. Sometimes I heard laughter, music, phone calls, moving boxes. The apartment changed hands more than once, I think. Or maybe time inside the wall does not move the way it does outside. I pounded. I scratched. I poked my finger through the hole. Again and again. Pound, scratch, pokey, pound, scratch, pokey. At first, I did it because I wanted help. Then, I did it because I wanted to be noticed. After that, I did it because there was nothing else left of me. The rhythm became my whole world. My hands knew it, even when my mind drifted. Pound, scratch, pokey, one day, or night, or whatever counted as time in that dark space. I touched my head and realized my hair had grown. It hung down past my shoulders. Later, it reached my chest. Then, my waist. It became long and heavy, falling over my smooth, empty face. I tried to remember what I used to look like, but even that began to fade. My name slipped away first. Then my mother's voice. Then the shape of my old apartment before the wall opened. Only the need remained. The need to get out. The need for someone else to stand where I was standing. I hated myself when that thought first came. I fought it. I tried to hold on to the idea that I was human, that I would never do to someone else what had been done to me. But darkness wears things down. Silence eats at memory. After long enough, mercy starts to feel like a word from a language you no longer speak. Then One quiet night, I heard it. A phone scrolling, that soft, familiar sound of a thumb moving across glass, the tiny clicks and taps of someone lying in bed, trying to ignore a noise in the wall. I froze. Someone was there. Someone new. I pressed myself against the inside of the drywall. I listened to their breathing. I felt warmth on the other side. Real warmth. Living warmth. My finger found the slit. For one moment, the last small piece of me understood what I was about to do. Then I pushed my finger through the hole. Soft human skin touched mine. Warm, alive, close, and from somewhere deep inside the dark space where my mouth used to be, a thought rose up, calm and grateful. Finally, someone was here to take my place. Story 3. I have always loved hiking. Some people like beaches, cities, restaurants, or loud places full of people, but I have always felt more comfortable in the mountains. I like the feeling of walking for hours with everything I need on my back. I like the pain in my legs after a steep climb, the smell of wet soil, the cold air in the morning, and the silence that comes when you are far away from roads and houses. For me, hiking was never just a hobby. It was the one thing that made my mind feel clear. My friends felt the same way. We were the kind of group that would disappear into the forest for days at a time. We would choose a route, pack our bags, tell our families when we expected to be back, and then walk until the world became simple. No phones, no work, no city noise, just trees, stones, water, and the sound of our own breathing. The mountains in my country are beautiful, but they are not safe if you are careless. You have to respect them. The weather can change fast. A warm afternoon can turn into a freezing night. A dry trail can become slippery after a short rain. There are steep drops, loose rocks, wild animals, and sometimes even people you don't want to meet when you are alone in the woods. Most hikers know that danger in the mountains does not always come from nature. Sometimes it comes from strangers. Because of that, we had our own rules. We never camped too close to a main road. We never made too much noise at night. We always checked the area before sleeping. If we found one of the small mountain cabins, we used it. Many of them were free and built for hikers. They were simple wooden shelters, often cold and dusty, but some could be locked from the inside. That lock always made us feel better. A locked door in the middle of nowhere can feel like a castle wall, but sometimes there was no cabin nearby, and when that happened, we used a different trick. We slept on overlooked towers. The mountains were full of them. They were usually built at the top of hills or near scenic viewpoints, places where tourists could climb up and see the valleys below. Most were made of wood or metal, with narrow platforms and very steep stairs. They were easy enough for a healthy person to climb, even with a backpack, but animals usually did not try. The stairs were too sharp and strange for them. At least that was what we believed. So when we found one of those towers, we often used it as our sleeping place. It kept us off the ground, it gave us a good view, and most importantly, it made us feel safer. That night, we camped at one of those towers. The place was almost perfect. It was a clearing at the top of a mountain with a wide open view of the valley below. Far down in the darkness, there was a city. Its lights spread across the valley like glowing embers, yellow and white and orange, shining under the black sky. From that height, the city looked peaceful. It was strange to think that thousands of people were down there, living their lives, while we stood above them in the cold forest air. The campsite itself was simple. It sat right beside the trail. One path continued across the mountain, while another path split away and went down through the trees. There was a stone fireplace in the clearing, a small open shelter with only a roof and no walls. and the 3-story overlooked tower standing beside it. The tower was not special. It looked like many others we had slept on before. Wooden beams, railings, platforms, and a set of steep stairs leading up from the ground. After the long hike, it looked like heaven. We made dinner near the fireplace while the last light faded from the sky. Nothing fancy, just the usual camp food. We were tired and hungry enough that it tasted better than anything from a restaurant. We joked around while we ate, talked about the route for the next day, and complained about our sore feet. The air was cool, but not too cold. The trees around the clearing moved softly in the wind. After dinner, we cleaned up, put out the fire, and carried our things up the tower. One by one, we rolled out our sleeping mats on the upper platform. There was not much space, but we had done this before. Everyone knew how to place their bags and sleeping gear without making the others uncomfortable. It was only around 10 p.m., but after a full day of walking with heavy backpacks, nobody wanted to stay awake for long. My friends climbed into their sleeping bags and slowly went quiet. One of them was asleep within minutes. Another kept shifting around for a while, trying to find a comfortable position on the hard wooden floor, then finally stopped moving. I was not tired yet. I stayed standing near the railing for almost an hour, looking at the stars and the lights in the valley. The view from the tower was incredible. The sky was clear, and because we were far from most of the city light, the stars looked sharp and bright. The forest stretched around us like a black ocean. Every now and then, the wind moved through the trees and made them whisper. Around 11:15 p.m., I finally crawled into my sleeping bag. I had placed it near the side of the platform on purpose, because I wanted to wake up with a good view of the sunrise. I remember thinking that the morning would be beautiful from up there. I could already picture the first light touching the tops of the trees and spreading across the valley. The forest at night has a sound that hikers get used to. It is not truly silent. There are crickets, owls, the wind moving through branches, leaves brushing against each other, and sometimes a dog barking far away from some village or farm. There is also a low kind of background noise, almost like white noise, maybe from the wind moving over the land or distant cars on roads too far away to see. That sound is comforting when you know it. It tells you the forest is normal. I was just starting to fall asleep when I noticed that something had changed. The usual sounds were gone. At first, my mind did not fully understand it. I was half asleep, floating in that soft space between waking and dreaming. But then my eyes opened, and I listened. No crickets, no owls, no small rustles in the brush, no faraway dog, only the wind. The absence of sound felt bigger than the sound itself. It pressed against my ears. The whole forest seemed to be holding its breath. I told myself it was nothing. Forests do that sometimes. Animals go quiet for reasons you never understand. Maybe a fox had passed nearby. Maybe the temperature had dropped. Maybe I was simply noticing something that had always happened before, but I had never paid attention. Still, curiosity got the better of me. I slowly lifted my head and looked through the railing. At first, I saw only darkness and the pale shapes of trees at the edge of the clearing. Then, I noticed something at the far side, near the path we had used to enter the camp. A shadow was standing there. No, not standing. Moving, it was coming into the clearing. At first, it was hard to tell how big it was. In the dark, with the trees behind it, it looked like a tall patch of shadow sliding forward. But with every step it took, it became clearer. It was growing larger because it was coming closer. I wanted to wake my friends. I opened my mouth, ready to whisper their names, but then the thing moved near the small shelter, the one with the roof and no walls. That was when I understood how tall it was. It was almost as tall as the shelter. The shelter was more than 3 meters at its highest point. This thing stood close to that height. Maybe not exactly as tall, but close enough that my brain refused to accept it at first. It moved on 2 legs, but it did not move like a person. Every step looked difficult, like its body was not made to walk that way. Its knees did not seem to bend properly. Instead of smooth steps, its legs jerked forward in sharp, violent movements. It was as if the joints were locked, and it had to force them through the motion. The movement looked painful, but the thing did not stop. It kept advancing down the path with slow, heavy steps. I froze. A cold wave of fear moved through my body, and suddenly I was more awake than I had ever been. My heart began to pound so hard I was sure it would wake the others. I did not know what I was looking at. I only knew I did not want it to look up and see me. Very slowly, I lowered myself back from the railing. I moved inch by inch, trying not to make the wooden platform creak under my weight. My friends were still asleep around me, breathing softly in their sleeping bags. I wanted to shake them awake, but I was terrified that any movement or sound would draw attention, so I hid. I pulled myself farther away from the edge of the platform and lay flat, staring into the darkness above me. Unfortunately, I could not close my ears. The fear made my hearing painfully sharp. Every sound from below came to me in terrible detail. Each step the thing took seemed to echo inside my skull. I heard the dirt compress under its feet. I heard small sticks snap. I heard stones shift and settle under its weight. It sounded too heavy, much too heavy. The steps came closer to the tower. My whole body tightened. I kept imagining the worst sound possible, the long wooden creak of the stairs as it began to climb. The stairs were steep. Animals did not climb them. That was the whole reason we slept there. But whatever this thing was, it was not a normal animal. It walked on 2 legs. It was tall enough to reach places no animal should reach. I imagined its long hands grabbing the railing. I imagined its head rising slowly above the platform. I imagined waking my friends only when it was already standing over us. The footsteps stopped. That was worse. The clearing became still. I could hear the wind. I could hear my own breathing. I could hear one of my friends shifting in his sleep. But from below, there was nothing. I waited for the stairs to scream under its weight. Nothing happened. Seconds passed. Then more seconds. Maybe a full minute. Maybe longer. Time became strange in that silence. Then the steps began again. But they were moving away. At first, I did not trust it. I stayed where I was, stiff and silent, listening as the heavy footsteps slowly faded. Little by little, the normal forest sounds returned. A cricket started somewhere in the grass. Then another. Leaves moved. The night seemed to breathe again. After a long time, I gathered enough courage to look. I slowly crawled back to the railing and peeked through. The thing had taken the path that led down the mountain. I could just barely see it between the trees, its tall shape moving into the dark conifer woods. It walked with the same terrible jerking motion, its long body shifting in and out of view between the trunks. Then, it disappeared. I did not sleep for the rest of the night. I stayed awake in my sleeping bag, staring at the stairs, waiting for it to return. Every sound made my heart jump. Every gust of wind sounded like a footstep. My friends slept through all of it. None of them knew what had passed below us. None of them knew how close it had come. By morning, part of me wanted to believe I had dreamed it. Maybe I had been half asleep. Maybe my mind had taken a tree shadow and turned it into a creature. Maybe the silence and the long day of hiking had done something strange to me. People see things in the dark all the time. Fear fills in missing shapes. I almost convinced myself of that. Then I smelled it. The whole campsite reeked. It was a sickly sweet smell, thick and rotten, like meat left in the sun for too long. It hung around the clearing and clung to the air. It had not been there the evening before. We all noticed it as soon as we climbed down from the tower. One of my friends covered his nose and asked if something had died nearby. Another looked around the edge of the clearing but found nothing. Nobody wanted breakfast. The smell was too strong. It turned my stomach and made the back of my throat feel coated. We packed our things quickly, much faster than usual. I kept looking toward the path that went down the mountain, the same path the thing had taken during the night. I said nothing. As soon as my bag was ready, I left the campsite and did not look back. I never told my friends what I saw. I knew how it would sound. They would say I had been tired. They would say I saw a bear, or a person, or a shadow. They would laugh it off or worry that I was losing my mind, and maybe that would have been easier than the truth. But I know what I saw. When I got home, I searched through local folklore. I read old stories from the mountains, reports from hikers, legends about strange creatures in the forests of Central Europe. I looked for anything that matched it. A tall figure, 2 legs, jerking steps, a rotten sweet smell. Silence before it appeared. I found nothing. To this day, I still have no idea what walked through that campsite below our tower. I only know that the forest went silent before it came, and the next morning, the air smelled like death. Story 4. My mother was the one who gave me that nickname a few days after I told her I was planning to get surgery. I think she was trying to be supportive in her own old-fashioned way. She had never been good with this kind of thing. Every serious conversation between us turned into a fight or a joke, and most of the time I could not tell which one hurt more. So I guess I don't get to call you Gavin anymore, she texted me. What do I call you now, Nanum? I had just sent her a long message explaining why that name did not feel like mine anymore. I told her why I was moving forward, why I could not keep pretending, why I needed my body to finally feel like it belonged to me. I had spent nearly an hour typing everything out, deleting parts, rewriting them, trying to make it gentle enough for her to understand. And that was her answer. Short, a little sharp, a little mocking. But there was also something close to acceptance hidden inside it, and after 3 years of fighting with her, I decided not to push back. I was tired. If Naname was the closest she could get to saying she still loved me, then I would take it. River, my partner, told me this was only the first step. You need to make it real now, they said. You've been dancing around it for too long. Once you put it out there, it becomes a promise to yourself. Like telling the universe, this is what I'm doing. I think people call it manifesting. So I did. On June 1st, at the start of Pride Month, I made a GoFundMe to help pay for the surgery. There was something painful and almost funny about having to connect it to my Facebook profile, because I had not changed anything there yet. My name, my pictures, all of it still belonged to the version of me I was trying to leave behind. So when I posted the fundraiser, the title came out as Donate to help Naname get his top surgery. River looked at the page and frowned. When are you going to fill that in? I can't yet, I said. Not until it feels official. You said making it real matters. I don't want to speak my real name until it actually belongs to me. I cannot explain how nervous I was when I posted it. My hands shook. My stomach felt sick. Most of the people in my real life were still not okay with what I was doing. Some had already blocked me. Some had smiled to my face and then disappeared from my life quietly. Posting that fundraiser only confirmed what I already feared. Within a few days, about 30 more people were gone. By the end of the week, I had raised only about $250. I know that sounds ungrateful. It was more support than I expected, and I should have been thankful. But the surgery required $8,000 up front because my insurance called it cosmetic. Cosmetic. As if this was about looking nicer in pictures. As if I had not spent years feeling trapped inside my own skin. I even asked my counselor if a recommendation from him would help. He knew better than anyone what I had been through. He had heard every ugly thought, every breakdown, every moment when I did not know how much longer I could keep living like this. But even his letter did nothing. The number did not move. The company did not care. During the second week, GoFundMe sent me several emails asking if I still wanted to keep waiting for donations. Something in me snapped. I shut the whole thing down. When the money came through, I took it and went straight to the nearest bar. I told myself I was only going to have one drink. That was a lie. Here's to manifesting destiny, I slurred, raising my glass toward the bartender after my second shot. Or maybe my 13th. I honestly did not care anymore. Rough night? A voice asked from my left. Somebody die? I turned and saw one of the most colorful people I had ever seen. They wore a bright red bra over a blue and silver top, with ripped jeans covered in stars, strings, glitter, and bits of something metallic. Behind them, hanging from their outfit, was a torn black wing on one side and something that looked like a devil tail on the other. For a second, I was not sure if it was the alcohol, the lighting, or both, but they did not look completely human. "What are you supposed to be?" I asked. "Some kind of demiurge?" "Or something," they said with a smile. "But you should be nicer to the person who just paid for your next 5 drinks." They moved closer. Their breath smelled like whiskey and blood. "Or am I reading this wrong?" They asked, glancing down at my own colorful outfit. "I have a partner," I said. They laughed softly. "I don't see them here drinking your worries away with you. Let me guess. They're the sensible one. And you're the one who knows better. You know things won't really get better. That should have made me leave." Instead, I stared into my glass. "I was supposed to get surgery," I said. "I was supposed to make it official." I gestured vaguely at myself, at the clothes I had chosen, at the body underneath them. But that dream is dead. I don't even have a quarter of what I need. Might as well spend what I have on something tonight. The stranger tilted their head. "You give up fast." I looked at them. "What?" "Have you ever thought about alternatives?" The music got louder around us, heavy bass shaking through the floor. "What kind of alternatives?" They shrugged. "Everyone thinks they have to go the professional route. Hospitals, insurance, waiting lists, paperwork, it's all a scam if you ask me. I don't exactly want surgery in a back alley. And why not?" They asked. "You can sit here and drown yourself in cheap liquor if you want. But deep down, you know you'd do anything to start your real life." Then they slid a card across the bar. There was only a phone number on it. A friend of mine used them not long ago, they said. Cost about $1,000 at most. Very reasonable. Life-changing. I stared at the card. "Why give me this? You don't even know me." "Because I used to be exactly like you," they said. "Sitting in a bar, trying to drink my way out of a body I hated." They winked, then disappeared into the crowd to dance. I told myself I was not desperate, but I was. I kept staring at the number, wondering if there was another way. River would have called it a terrible idea. They would have told me to slow down, breathe, think, not trust a stranger in a bar dressed like a fallen angel. And they would have been right. But what did I really have to lose? I called the number as soon as I stepped outside. "I can put down 400, I said when a rough voice answered. "Is that enough for an appointment?" The person on the other end gave me an address and told me to be there the next evening at 6. The next day, River knew something was wrong. "You okay?" they asked. I must have come home drunk and fallen asleep hard, because by the time I saw them again, I was already pacing around the apartment, trying to gather the courage to go to a surgeon I had found through a stranger in a bar. "It's nothing," I said. Then I left before they could ask too many questions. The address was across town near the waterfront. I called an Uber because I did not want to take my own car. I could not explain why. Maybe some part of me thought if I brought my car, it would be too easy for someone to trace me. Maybe I already knew I was walking into something criminal. When the Uber dropped me off, the place looked exactly like the kind of area where a person could disappear. Empty warehouses, broken fences, old shipping containers, wet pavement shining under streetlights. I got out and immediately reached for my keys, holding them between my fingers like a weapon. About 10 minutes later, an unmarked van pulled up beside me. The window rolled down, and a black man looked out. "You here for the doc?" he asked. I hesitated. He saw my face and nodded toward the back. "Get in." I offered the money, but he shook his head. Later, "Just get in." Something was lying in the back of the van under a sheet. It was long and still. I asked what it was, but the man only told me to buckle up. We drove away from the waterfront and out of town. I tried to keep track of where we were going, but after a while, the turns blurred together. The windows were dark, and I could not see much outside. When we finally stopped, 2 men opened the back doors and carried out whatever had been lying near my feet. From the shape of it, I was almost sure it was a body. They told me to follow them inside. The building looked abandoned from the outside, but inside had been turned into something like an operating room. There were gurneys, metal trays, machines, lights, and medical tools I did not know the names of. Everything looked too clean and too dirty at the same time, like someone had copied a hospital from memory but missed all the details that made hospitals feel safe. A man wearing a white mask came in. I guessed he was the doctor. He asked me basic questions about my health and history, while the others told me to remove my clothes. What happens next? I asked as they helped me onto a stretcher. I was placed beside the covered body. The doctor pulled the sheet away. I nearly screamed. It was not exactly a body, but it was not a mannequin either. It looked like a mannequin made of flesh, a human shape without any real features. No clear face, no hair, no marks, no identity, just a blank body, smooth and pale and waiting. "What is that?" I whispered. The doctor handed me a form. "You need to fill this out. Tell us what you want the new you to look like." I stared at him. "What do you mean the new me?" He sounded calm, almost bored. "This is what you wanted, isn't it? To change, to become your true self." I looked at the blank flesh beside me, and fear rushed through my body. Everything about this felt wrong. This was not surgery. This was something else, something much worse. "I think I want to leave," I said. "I'm not ready." The doctor studied me with a look I had seen too many times before. People always looked at me like that when they thought they understood my pain better than I did. "Please don't kill me," I whispered. The men in the room exchanged looks, then laughed. The doctor pulled his mask down and smiled. "We are not your enemy." The only thing you need to do is get out of your own head. He pointed toward the door. You can leave if you want. But this is a one-time offer. What we do here is not legal. We cannot have people coming back, bringing friends, asking questions. If you walk away, we will never answer your calls again. It will be like this never happened. My fingers were wet with sweat as I looked down at the form. Height, weight, gender, hair color, eye color, skin tone, scars, body shape. It looked so simple, almost normal, and that was what made it terrifying. The doctor saw me hesitate and sighed. "Let them go," he told the others. "Wait," I said quickly. "Just give me a second." The room went quiet. "What are the side effects?" I asked. "What actually happens?" The doctor folded his hands. "The explanation is very complex. Too many terms you would not understand. But the simple version is this. The body you are in now will no longer be your cage. Once we make all the changes to your new skin, your consciousness will be moved into the new host." He nodded toward the blank body. "And side effects?" "Any unpleasant effects will happen to the old body," he said. "Nothing you need to worry about." I tapped the pen against the paper. "What happens to the old body? To this one?" The doctor smiled. "Who cares? You are paying for a blank slate. That is what you get. At last, you can stop being Nane." That word hit me harder than it should have. Naname. I thought of my mother teasing me. I thought of school, of teachers calling out the wrong name while I sat frozen and refused to answer. I thought of all the years I had spent feeling like I was wearing someone else's life. I wrote blue eyes on the paper. After that, I did not look back. Half an hour later, I was strapped down beside the empty body while the doctor prepared an IV. "Nervous?" the nurse asked. She looked around my age. I nodded. "How many times have you done this?" I asked. She did not answer. Instead, she placed a mask near my face and told me to count down from 100. I think I reached 92 before the world began to melt. I dreamed I was standing naked in water up to my knees. Below me was my reflection. But it was not my reflection. It was the blank body, the empty flesh thing from the operating table. Every move I made, it made too. I tried to run through the water, but it dragged against my legs like glue. I tried to call for help. No sound came out. Then I looked down and saw the pale, colorless skin from the blank body crawling up my legs. It spread like wet paint. I scratched at it, but it kept moving. It covered my thighs, my stomach, my chest. It climbed my throat. The world went dark. But I was still standing. Now I was the blank body. In the water below, I saw the old me drift away from the reflection, loose and untethered. My old body moved to the far side of the pool and stood there, staring at me without expression. Then it raised one finger. Its mouth opened. A high, sharp scream tore through the darkness. I woke up shaking. Machines were beeping. Nurses were yelling. Someone was trying to hold me down. Across the room, I saw my old body on another table. Its dead eyes were open and staring straight at me. It shook when I shook, like we were still connected by invisible wires. Black blood poured from its mouth. The doctor shouted for them to put me back under. The last thing I saw was my old body reaching toward me. When I woke again, I heard a heart monitor and a television. My vision was blurry. My whole body ached. The Weather Channel was playing on a screen nearby. From the date, I realized I had been unconscious for 3 days. "Thank God you're awake," a nurse said when she noticed my eyes opening. She asked if I was in pain. She asked if I needed anything. Then she said, "An officer will come by later to take a statement. Try to remember whatever details you can." That was when I saw the chart near my bed. Jane Doe. For a second, I did not understand. Then I read it again. Jane Doe. They did not know who I was. "Do you have a phone?" I asked the nurse. She handed me one, probably thinking I needed to call someone. Instead, I turned on the camera and looked at my face. I almost dropped it. Every detail was right. Every choice from the form, the blue eyes, the face, the body. The small changes I had dreamed about for years. There were marks and bandages, but even through the swelling and pain, I knew. I was finally myself. I wanted to cry, but I was too weak. "Is there someone we can contact?" the nurse asked. I gave her River's information. Over the next hour, 2 police officers came in and asked questions. They said I had been found near a shelter with no ID, no fingerprints, and nothing on me. No drugs in her system either, the nurse told them. She's a blank slate. I told them I did not know what had happened. That was only partly a lie. I remembered the surgical room, the doctor, the blank body, but I knew how insane it would sound, so I said I had no memory of my identity, and they kept me listed as Jane Doe. Then River arrived. They stepped into the room, looked at me, and immediately looked confused. "I'm sorry," they said. "I think I'm in the wrong room." I sat up as much as I could and told them my real name. River froze. They stared at me for a long time. Their eyes moved over my face, my hands, my hair, my body. "Really?" they whispered. "That's you? This is you?" I smiled, holding back tears. "I wanted to surprise you." River closed the door and covered their mouth. "This is impossible. There are hardly any scars. I don't even recognize you. How did you do this? Does it matter?" They looked at my fingers and took a step back. "Your fingerprints are gone." Then their face changed. "How do I know you are who you say you are?" They asked. Tell me something only they would know. I understood why they were afraid. I almost laughed, but I stopped myself. "You have a mole on your left inner thigh," I said. "It looks like Mickey Mouse." River stared at me. Dear God. "It is you." They came to the bed and touched my face. "You did it." We stayed like that for hours. They held me while I rested. Nurses came in to check on me, asking more questions, drawing blood, taking samples. They seemed confused by me. One nurse said my immune system looked almost brand new, like a baby's. "We'll need to vaccinate you, just to be safe," she explained. I said that was fine. While she talked, I noticed a news report on the TV. A fire had destroyed a building downtown. Several unidentified bodies had been found inside. When they showed the outside of the building, I felt my stomach drop. It looked like the warehouse where the surgery had happened. River turned up the volume. The reporter said some people were still missing. The fire may have been caused by one person, and witnesses had given a sketch to police. Then they showed the sketch. My face went cold. It was my old face. River saw it too. "What's wrong?" they asked, though I could tell they already knew something was wrong. The nurse looked between us. "Do you know that person?" River quickly stood from the bed. "No, sorry, just looks like someone we used to know." The nurse said she would come back soon with the vaccine and left. River turned to me. "Enough," they said. "Who are you really?" "I'm not lying," I said. "That person on the screen is my old body." River stared at me like I had slapped them. I tried to explain everything. The bar. The card. The van. The doctor. The blank body. The transfer. The old body. I told them the doctor said I would not need to worry about it. I thought they were going to dispose of it, I said. I didn't know it could get up. River kept tapping their foot, staring at the TV. I'm sorry, they said. This is too much. They walked out before I could stop them. I sat there in the hospital bed, sore and terrified, trying to understand what was happening. Why was there an arsonist walking around in my old body? How much of me was still inside it? Did it remember River? Did it remember our apartment? Did it remember everything I had spent my life trying to escape? The nurse came back later. Is your friend all right? She asked. It's been a long day, I said. How soon can I leave? Once these vaccines are in your system, maybe tonight. You'll need to sign discharge papers. I nodded and asked to make a phone call. The only person I could think to call was my mother. Hey, it's Dee. You know what to do, her voicemail said. Mom, I said, then stopped. My voice was different. She would not recognize it. Oh God, you don't know this voice. Please pick up. Please. Then I saw movement outside the hospital window and nearly screamed, but it was only someone walking past the glass. The voicemail ended. I hung up and tried to calm down. No one would know me now. No one would believe me. I had wanted a new life, but I had not understood what it meant to be unrecognizable. I needed to get home. I needed to talk to River. I needed to fix this before my old body found them. Can we hurry with the vaccines? I asked the nurse. I need to be somewhere. I had never begged a cab driver to go faster in my life. I was not thinking about my new body anymore. I was not thinking about my face, my voice, my name, or the miracle I thought I had been given. I only cared about getting to River. When I reached our apartment building and saw the door partly open, I knew I was too late. Call the police, I told the driver, tossing him a card River had given me at the hospital cafe. Then I stepped inside. My new heart beat so hard it hurt. I did not call River's name. I moved quietly, looking around the living room. Then I saw blood on our rug. I searched for a weapon and grabbed an old sports trophy from a shelf. I used to run track and field years ago. It felt heavy enough. I moved toward the kitchen. That was where I saw it. My old body stood by the sink, looking out the window. In its hands was River's arm. River was on the floor, their face white with pain. I realized the thing had slammed their hand into the garbage disposal. River saw me. Their eyes widened, and they screamed. The thing in my old body turned. And I lost control. I ran forward and slammed the trophy into the back of its skull. It staggered, but did not fall. It shoved me away, kicked River against the fridge, and turned toward me. Looking at that face filled me with a hatred I did not know I still had. I had spent years hating it quietly. Now it was standing in front of me, empty and violent. I swung again. It caught my arm and twisted it. Pain shot through me. Then it grabbed a butcher knife from the counter and stabbed me in the side. I fell back, gasping. The thing stood there with blood running down its face, as if none of the wounds bothered it. "What are you?" I whispered. It did not answer. There was no life in its eyes, no thought, no feeling. It was a body without a soul, moving on whatever was left inside it. I threw anything I could reach to slow it down, then shoved the couch into the kitchen doorway and ran out of the apartment. I looked for the cab, but it was gone. The street was almost empty. A moment later, the thing came out behind me. Its dead eyes searched the street. So I ran. I shouted for help, but my voice was new. My neighbors would not know me. If they came out, they might see my old face chasing a strange woman and think I was the danger. They might help the wrong one. I ran into a playground and hid behind one of the structures, gasping for air, trying to think. There was only one way to stop it. I had to kill my old body. It came down the street slowly, searching. Somehow, it still had memories in that dead brain. That was how it had found River. That meant it probably knew everything I knew. My habits, my hiding places, my fears. So I had to stop acting like the old me. I grabbed a handful of sand from the playground. When it got close, I threw the sand into its eyes and kicked it hard between the legs. It staggered, but made no sound. Then it grabbed me by the throat and slammed me against a tree. "Help!" I screamed. "Please!" An older man was walking nearby with his dog. The dog started barking wildly at the thing holding me. Before the old man could stop it, the dog pulled free from the leash and ran toward us. It bit the thing's ankle. I dropped to the ground, coughing blood, and crawled away. The old man shouted at his dog, not understanding. I tried to warn him to run. Then the dog yelped. The thing bent down and bit into the dog's face, tearing away fur and flesh. The poor animal ran off crying. The dead thing looked at me with a piece of the dog still hanging from its mouth. Then it dropped onto all fours and ran toward me like an animal. I screamed at the old man to run and sprinted toward an intersection. A car had stopped nearby, the driver getting out to see what was happening. "Let me in," I shouted. He only stared at me, confused and scared. I did not have time to explain. I hit him, grabbed his keys, and jumped into the car just as my old body crashed onto the back of it. I slammed the car into reverse. The tires screamed. I drove backward and pinned the thing against the same tree. The car alarm blared. I held the gas down, trying to crush it, but somehow it pushed the car away. The force threw me into the back seat. That was when I saw an old opening behind the seat, the kind that led into the trunk. The thing clawed at the broken glass, trying to reach me. I pulled the trunk cover down and searched blindly inside. Its hand grabbed my ankle. I kicked hard. My fingers closed around a tire jack. The thing pulled me out of the car, and I swung with everything I had. The tire jack smashed into its face. It fell back. I knew it would not be enough. So I hit it again. And again. And again. I kept swinging until the face I had hated for so many years was nothing but crushed bone and blood. Then I collapsed beside it, laughing and crying and screaming all at once. By then, people had gathered. The last thing I remembered before passing out was the sound of police sirens. In the darkness, I saw the reflection again. This time, my old body stood in front of me. My old self. The thing that had come to collect me. It studied my new face and body like I was something strange in a cage. Then it reached out to touch my cheek. I slapped its hand away. "Enough," I said. "This is who I am now." Then I turned and walked away. Somewhere behind me, my old voice echoed through the dark, but I did not listen. This time, I moved toward the light. When I woke, someone was asking me if I understood the question. "Ma'am," a police officer said, "do you require an attorney?" My wounds had been treated. I was in a holding cell. A nurse had given me basic care, and 2 officers were waiting for my statement. Another voice came over the intercom. "Sir, we got 2 officers from downtown saying a woman matching her description was discharged from the hospital about 7 hours ago." "Yes," I said weakly. "That was me. It's been a rough day." The officer stared at me. "Considering you're connected to a homicide and an attempted assault, I'd say so." They showed me photos of my old body. Then they showed me photos from the apartment where they found River. Friends and family say they don't know anyone matching your description, the officer said. So let's start again. Who are you? And why did that person try to hurt you? Did you attack their partner? Was this revenge? You wouldn't believe me, I said. Try me. I leaned back and said nothing. Because what could I say? That I had paid strangers to move my soul into a new body? That my old body had gotten up, burned down a warehouse, attacked my partner, and tried to kill me? I had survived, but maybe this was the real price. Maybe I had been foolish to think I could escape my old self without it coming after me. Another officer came in and whispered something. They decided to let me rest for the night. One of them told me to think about who I could call in the morning. I'd consider a lawyer, he said. That night gave me time to think. When they came back, I told them who I wanted to call. River. If anyone could believe me after all of this, it would be them. The call went to voicemail. Babe, I said, my voice cracking. I know you don't believe this is me. I don't know if you'll ever forgive me, but I promise, it is me. Please, I need you now more than ever. The message ended. I went back to the holding cell, thinking my future was a prison cell and a name that still was not mine. Half an hour later, they told me River had posted my bail. I'd still get that lawyer, the officer said. We're moving forward with the investigation. Outside, River was waiting with one arm in a sling and a black eye. I ran to them and apologized again and again. I had to sell my car for the bail, River said. I'm so sorry, I cried. I didn't know that thing would come after you. I didn't know. River raised their good hand to stop me. I came to say goodbye. They said, this is for saving my life. Nothing more. We're done. They handed me a bag. Inside were some belongings, cash, and pieces of my old life. I stepped back, stunned, but we can be together now. I'm who I wanted to be. River looked at me with pain in their eyes. I don't know who you are anymore, but you're not the person I fell in love with. River, please get away from me, they said. I blocked your number too. They got into a cab. River, I said, don't do this. Please, but they left. That was the last time I saw them. I wandered downtown with nowhere to go. I had a new body, a new face, and no life waiting for me. No one knew me. No one trusted me. My mother would not recognize my voice. My partner had left. The police still wanted answers I could not give. Eventually, I ended up at a subway station. I stood near the edge of the platform and looked down at the rails. For a moment, I thought about stepping forward. No one would miss me. No one even knew who I was anymore. Excuse me, a voice said behind me. I don't think you should do that. Go away, I said softly. You don't know me. Doesn't matter, the voice replied. It would be a shame to ruin that pretty face. What do you care? Somebody should. I stepped a little closer to the edge. I have nothing to live for. I lost everything. I don't even have a name. Well, they said, let me give you one. I paused. What? Turn around. Let me see your face, and I'll give you a name. Seems fair, doesn't it? I turned. They were tall, with dark green hair, wearing a black grunge top, white slacks, and heels. Their accent sounded Irish, maybe. Their eyes were kind. A beautiful face like that deserves a beautiful name, they said. Let's make a deal. I give you a name, you give me one, and then we go out for a drink. I have too many problems, I said. You wouldn't even know where to begin. But you said you're nobody, they replied. Doesn't that mean you can disappear, go far away, and start fresh? I bit my lip. In a strange way, they were right. And you'd come with me? I asked. I'm starting to like the idea, they said with a shrug. For the first time in days, I laughed for real. You remind me of this idiot I knew in junior high, I said. Michael, except better looking. So I guess that makes you Mike. They smiled. And for you, how does Lily sound? Lily, I let the name settle inside me. I liked it. No, I loved it. So, Mike said, now that us nobodies are somebodies, how about we go make something of ourselves? The train arrived 4 minutes later. We got on together. I did not know where we were going. For once, it did not matter. Maybe being Nanane had not been the end of me after all. Story 5. Yes, this is a strong horror story. Here is the rewritten version in simple English, smooth paragraph form, no headings, no bold names, and kept close to the original story. I applied for the maintenance job online a little over a month ago. Even from the beginning, the job listing felt strange. It did not say much about the company. It did not say exactly where the job was. It did not even explain what kind of equipment I would be working on. All it said was that the person hired needed basic electrical knowledge, should be comfortable working at extreme heights, should be willing to work alone for long periods, and must be able to follow strict operational rules without question. That last part should have made me stop. Actually, all of it should have made me stop. But then I saw the pay. The salary was insane. It was the kind of money that could wipe out every debt I had in 1 year. I was broke. I was behind on bills. I had no real options left and no one coming to save me. So I did what desperate people do. I ignored every warning sign and applied. The process was too easy. There was no real interview, no video call, no office address, no background conversation with a manager. A few days after I submitted my application, I received an automated email telling me I had been accepted for the position. It gave me a start date and said a hired driver would come to my apartment to pick me up. That was it. No phone number, no company introduction, no questions. I should have refused right there, but I had already started imagining what that paycheck could do for me. Rent paid. Credit cards cleared. No more checking my bank account before buying food. I convinced myself that strange jobs in remote places probably worked differently. Maybe they kept things vague for security reasons. Maybe the tower handled government communications or private data. Maybe everything was normal, just unusual. The driver arrived early in the morning in a dark SUV with tinted windows. He did not knock on my door. He did not call my name. He just sat outside with the engine running until I came down with my duffel bag. When I approached the vehicle, he got out, opened the back door, and waited. He did not say hello. He did not ask if I was the right person. He just watched me put my bag inside, then got back behind the wheel. The ride took 8 hours. For the first few hours, we stayed on normal highways. Then we crossed into another state, then another. I asked the driver once where we were going, but he did not answer. He only kept both hands on the wheel and looked straight ahead. After a while, the roads became smaller. The towns disappeared. The gas stations became fewer and farther apart. Asphalt turned into cracked road, then gravel, then dirt. We climbed higher and higher into a remote mountain range. I still do not know exactly where it was. The trees grew thick around the road, tall pines packed so close together they blocked most of the sky. The air became thinner and colder. My ears popped more than once as the SUV crawled up narrow switchbacks with no guardrails. By the time we reached the site, I had a headache and a deep feeling in my stomach that I had made a mistake. The road opened into a huge flat clearing cut straight out of the forest. It looked unnatural, like someone had shaved a circle into the mountain. In the center of that clearing stood a communications tower. It was enormous. The steel structure stretched hundreds of feet into the sky. Satellite dishes were fixed to it at different levels, and red aviation lights blinked in the cold air. Thick cables ran down the tower and disappeared into the ground. At its base stood a tall chain-link fence topped with razor wire. Inside the fence was a square concrete building with no windows. That building was the ground-level maintenance bunker. That was where I met my trainer. The driver stopped outside the gate. The moment my boots touched the dirt, he unlocked the doors, let me take my bag, and drove away. He did not even wait to see if someone let me in. The SUV turned around, rolled back down the dirt road, and disappeared into the trees. My trainer stood on the other side of the fence, watching the SUV leave. He looked like a man who had not slept properly in years. His skin was pale but rough, almost leathery from the cold and wind. His eyes were bloodshot, and every small sound made him twitch. He did not introduce himself. He did not offer his name. He did not ask mine. He only unlocked the gate, waved me through quickly, locked it behind me, and handed me a clipboard with a laminated checklist attached to it. "You check the fuel levels in the back generator every morning," he said. His voice was dry and rough, like he had been shouting for days. "You climb the tower at noon and adjust the uplink dishes. Before sunset, you walk the inside of the perimeter fence and check for damage. That is the routine. You follow it exactly. You do not change it." I nodded and looked around. The clearing was silent except for the wind moving through the metal beams of the tower. It made a low whistling sound, almost like the whole structure was breathing. "Are we the only ones up here?" I asked. "Yes," he said. He did not look at me when he answered. His eyes kept moving toward the dark line of pine trees beyond the fence. "We are the only humans within 50 miles. Nobody comes up here to check on us. It is just you and me." The way he said humans bothered me. He led me into the bunker and showed me around. The place was built like it was meant to survive a bomb. The walls were thick, poured concrete. There were no windows. The inside had two main areas. The front was the living space, if you could call it that. It had two metal cots, harsh fluorescent lights, a small kitchenette, shelves of canned food, a bathroom stall, and a large desk with a two-way radio console on it. The main entrance was a heavy steel access door that opened out into the clearing. On the inside, it had 3 sliding deadbolts, each one thick enough to stop a truck. The back section was the generator room. A reinforced metal door separated it from the living quarters. Behind that door sat a huge industrial diesel generator that powered the whole facility and the tower outside. Even with the door closed, I could feel its low vibration under my boots. There was also another way out. In the ceiling above the desk, there was a metal roof hatch. A steel ladder ran up the wall to it. The hatch opened onto the flat roof of the bunker, and from there, you could reach the stairs that climbed the outside of the tower. That first day passed in a blur of instructions and silence. My trainer did not make small talk. He showed me the food, the tools, the radio, the generator, and the checklist. Then he stopped speaking, unless he had to. Before we went to sleep that night, he sat me down at the small metal table in the kitchenette. His face was serious. His hands trembled slightly as he folded them in front of him. "There is one rule you never break while you are stationed here," he said. I waited. Sometimes a thick fog comes over this mountain. It does not move like normal weather. It does not roll in slowly. It drops all at once. When you see that fog, you get inside this bunker immediately, and you lock the main steel door. "Okay," I said. At first, I thought he was talking about some kind of mountain weather danger, Maybe the fog made it impossible to see the edge of the tower. Maybe the temperature dropped too quickly. Maybe the air became too thin. Is it a cold front thing, I asked, or an altitude thing? No, he said, his bloodshot eyes fixed on mine. You lock the door, and no matter what you hear outside, you do not open it. I frowned. What do you mean, no matter what I hear? You will hear things in the fog, he said. Voices, people asking for help, people screaming. You ignore them. You keep the deadbolts locked, and you wait until the fog lifts. I stared at him for a few seconds. I thought he was messing with me. Some kind of first night joke to scare the new guy. I was tired, but I almost laughed. When does the fog usually come? I asked. He laughed first, but it was not a normal laugh. It was dry and empty and so unpleasant that the sound stayed in the room after he stopped. No one knows, he said. It comes when they are hungry. I did not know what to say to that, so I just nodded and agreed. I thought maybe isolation had done something to him. Maybe he had been up here too long with no people around, no proper sleep, and nothing but wind, steel, and radio static for company. For the next 3 weeks, nothing strange happened. The work was boring, but hard. Every morning, I checked the diesel lines and fuel levels in the generator room. At noon, I climbed the tower. The stairs were metal and narrow, and the higher I went, the more the wind pushed against me. Some days, I had to scrape ice from the satellite dishes. Other days, I adjusted bolts, checked cables, and made small calibrations. In the evenings, I walked the inside of the fence and looked for broken links, loose posts, or signs of animals trying to dig under. My trainer barely spoke. He seemed to live inside his own fear. Whenever we were outside, he watched the tree line like he expected something to step out of it. At night, he slept with a loaded shotgun leaning against the wall beside his cot. He also spent hours alone in the generator room. That was the part that bothered me most. He would lock himself in there, sometimes for a long time. Over the roar of the diesel engine, I could hear a strange scraping sound coming through the metal door. It sounded like someone dragging a screwdriver across steel again and again. When I asked him what he was doing, he glared at me and told me to focus on my checklist. By the end of the 3rd week, I was sure something was wrong with him. I thought the isolation had damaged his mind. It made sense. Nobody should live like that for years. Nobody should be that alone. I decided that as soon as my first month was over, I would ask for a transfer. If they refused, maybe I would quit, no matter how good the money was. Then, 1 week ago, we had what I thought was a false alarm. I was eating lunch at the desk when the temperature inside the bunker suddenly dropped. It was sharp enough that I noticed it right away. My trainer shot out of his cot, grabbed the shotgun, and sprinted to the main steel door. He slammed all 3 deadbolts into place, then stood with his back against the door, breathing hard. But no fog came. A normal storm moved over the peaks, dark clouds, and wind. Nothing more. Still, he stayed by the door for 3 hours with the shotgun in his hands. He did not speak. He did not sit down. He did not even blink much. That was when I became certain he was broken. I was wrong. Yesterday afternoon, the routine ended for good. It was around 2 o'clock. The sky was clear, and the sun shone brightly over the mountains. I was on the flat roof of the bunker, sorting through a toolbox and looking for a specific wrench I needed for the tower uplink. My trainer was outside walking the perimeter fence. He had his handheld radio clipped to his belt. The base radio inside the bunker was on, sitting on the desk below me. I looked over the edge of the roof and saw him near the southern corner of the fence, checking a section of wire. Then the air changed. 1 second, everything was clear. The next second, A thick gray fog dropped over the mountain. It did not roll in from the trees. It did not drift across the clearing. It appeared all at once, like someone had thrown a gray sheet over the whole world. The tower, the trees, the fence, the sky, all of it disappeared into a wall of fog. The temperature fell so quickly that my breath turned white. Then the wind stopped. That was the worst part. The sudden silence. No wind through the tower, no birds, no movement in the trees. Nothing. I remembered the rule. I dropped the tools and ran to the roof hatch. My hands were shaking as I pulled it open. I climbed down the ladder as fast as I could, almost slipping twice, and landed hard on the concrete floor inside the living quarters. I slammed the hatch shut above me and turned the locking wheel tight. Then I turned around. The room was empty. My trainer was not inside. The main steel access door was closed, and the 3 deadbolts were locked. For one confused second, I thought maybe he had made it in before me and gone into the generator room. But then the radio on the desk burst to life with a scream of static. His voice came through the speaker. "Help." I froze. "Open the door." He screamed. "Oh God, please open the door." I grabbed the microphone from the desk. "Where are you?" I shouted. "I'm outside." He cried. The panic in his voice was horrible. It did not sound fake. It sounded like a man being torn apart. "I'm bleeding out. My leg is gone. It took my leg. Please, open the door." I stared at the steel door. His warning came back to me. No matter what you hear outside, you do not open it. But this was not some unknown voice in the fog. This was my trainer, my partner, the only other human being within 50 miles. I could hear him sobbing through the radio. Then I heard something outside the door, a wet, dragging sound across the dirt, like someone pulling themselves forward with their hands. "Please." He screamed. "Please, I'm right here." I told myself the rule was meant for strangers. It was meant for voices pretending to be lost hikers. It was not meant for him. He was real. He was hurt. I could not stay inside a warm-lit bunker and listen to a man die a few feet away. So I opened the door. I threw back the top deadbolt, then the middle, then the bottom. The moment I pulled the handle, freezing gray fog poured inside and rolled across the floor. I could not see anything beyond the doorway. "Reach out," I shouted. "Grab my hand. I can't see you." A hand came out of the fog. It was pale, long, and covered in gray dirt. I grabbed it. The second my fingers wrapped around its wrist, every part of my body knew I had made a terrible mistake. The skin was freezing cold. There was no warmth in it at all. The joint felt stiff and wrong, like I was holding a branch wrapped in wet leather. But I had already started pulling. Fear and adrenaline took over. I planted my boots against the floor, leaned back, and dragged the figure through the doorway with all my strength. It stumbled into the bunker. I did not look at it right away. I slammed the steel door shut, forcing the fog back outside, and locked all 3 deadbolts again. Then I turned around, breathing hard, expecting to see my trainer on the floor with one leg gone. That was not what I saw. Standing in the middle of the room was something that had never been human. It was tall, at least 8 feet, maybe more. It had to hunch its back to fit under the ceiling. Its body was painfully thin, with pale, wet-looking skin stretched tight over sharp bones. It had no hair. Its arms hung past its knees, but they were wrong. Too long, too many joints. They bent in strange angles, like broken sticks that still worked somehow. Its fingers were long and ended in sharp white points. But its head was the worst part. It had no face, No eyes, no nose, no mouth, no ears. The front of its skull was smooth, pale skin. Instead of a mouth, its neck was split open from the front. Inside the opening was a wet, pulsing mass of membranes, cords, and shifting cartilage. It trembled and fluttered like something alive inside its throat. Then, the thing spoke. "I'm bleeding out. My leg is gone. It took my leg. Please, open the door." It was my trainer's voice. Perfect, not close, not similar. Perfect, the same fear, the same pain, the same desperate sobbing. I backed away until my shoulders hit the concrete wall. The creature slowly turned its smooth head toward me. It had no eyes, but I knew it was looking at me. One of its long arms lifted, joints bending in too many places. Its sharp fingers twitched. It took one slow step toward me. I ran. I sprinted to the back of the bunker and grabbed the handle of the generator room door. I threw it open, rushed inside, and slammed it shut behind me. Then I spun the heavy locking wheel until the bolts drove into the frame. A second later, the creature hit the other side. The metal door shook so hard I thought it would rip from the wall. "Help!" My trainer's voice screamed from outside. "Please open the door." I backed away into the cramped generator room. The diesel engine roared in the center, shaking the floor. The room smelled of fuel, hot metal, and oil. I moved backward until my shoulders touched the wall. Something rough scraped against my back. I turned and shined a flashlight from the toolbox onto the metal wall. The wall was covered in scratches. Not random scratches. Words. Thousands of words had been carved into the steel plates. Sentences, dates, whole paragraphs. They were cut deep and uneven, made with some sharp tool. This was the scraping sound I had heard for 3 weeks. My trainer had been writing. I moved the flashlight close and started reading. The first entry said he had learned what the creatures were called. Sky fishers. They lived in the highest peaks of the range. They made the fog themselves, pushing it from their bodies like smoke to blind anything trapped inside it. They did not hunt flesh. They did not care about eating meat. They took voices. He had written that they ripped out vocal cords while people were still screaming, and somehow recorded the agony. Then they used those stolen voices to lure the next victim out. "Do not listen to the screams," he had scratched into the wall. I moved the light to another panel. There, he had written about the agency. The people who hired us knew the creatures were here. They had always known. The bunker had been built for this exact reason. The tower was not just a communications tower. It was some kind of sonic jammer, sending out a high-frequency signal that kept the creatures from spreading down from the mountain into populated valleys. We were not maintenance workers. We were guards. Wardens. If the creatures ever got past the fence and moved toward the towns below, there was a red button under the desk in the living quarters. Pressing it would call an airstrike on the site. Whoever pressed it would die with them. Another crash shook the door behind me. The creature dragged its sharp fingers down the metal, making a horrible screeching sound. Then it spoke in my voice. "Where are you?" "I'm inside. The door is locked." I almost dropped the flashlight. It had my voice now. I forced myself to keep reading. The final section was near the diesel tank. The scratches there were deeper, messier, almost angry. My trainer had been there for 9 years. 9 years. He had asked for a transfer again and again, but the agency refused. They told him nobody left the post. You either stayed until you died, or you left in a body bag. He had watched recruits die in the fog because he followed the rule and kept the door shut. They screamed for hours, and the agency simply sent replacements. Then I read the part that made my blood go cold. He had requested a new recruit. Me, he had lied to the agency and told them the generator needed major repairs. He knew they would send someone. He knew the fog would come again sooner or later. He planned to use the next recruit as his replacement, then run when he got the chance. He had a vehicle hidden 2 miles down the dirt road under a tarp. He wrote that he was sorry. He wrote that he knew it was evil. But he was done being the warden. I sat down beside the roaring generator and read the words again, even though I already understood. My trainer had not been taken by the creature before I opened the door. He had left me here. Maybe he was already gone before the fog came. Maybe the thing had taken him near the fence. Maybe he made it to the hidden vehicle. I still do not know. But I know he brought me there so he could try to escape. The creature stayed outside the generator room for 8 hours. At first, it hit the door over and over, trying to break it open. When that did not work, it used the voices. My trainer screamed for help. Then my voice screamed that I was locked outside. Then both voices came together, layered over each other, crying, begging, choking, pleading. When I still did not open the door, it dragged its fingers along the steel. The sound cut through the roar of the generator and stabbed into my skull. I pressed my hands over my ears, but I could still hear it. I stayed on the floor, breathing diesel fumes, reading the scratched warnings on the walls again and again so I would not lose my mind. At 6 in the morning, the sound stopped. No screaming, no scratching, no impact against the door, just the generator. I did not open the door to the living quarters. I did not trust the silence. The creature could have been standing there, waiting, instead. I saw the escape ladder in the corner of the generator room. It led up through a narrow shaft to another roof hatch. My arms shook as I climbed. Every movement felt too loud. At the top, I opened the hatch just enough to look out. The fog was gone. The morning sky was clear. The trees stood still around the clearing. The tower lights blinked above me like nothing had happened. I climbed onto the roof and looked down. The main steel door below was open. The living quarters were empty. The creature had left with the fog. I climbed the stairs up the radio tower until I reached the highest observation deck, about 300 feet above the ground. The wind hit my face hard and cold. For the first time since arriving at the site, my phone had a strong signal. I pulled it out to call emergency services. I was going to tell them everything. The bunker, the creature, the agency, the dead or escaped trainer, the scratched logs, the red button. Then I looked down at the dirt road. 3 black SUVs were climbing the mountain. They had no police markings, no emergency lights, just dark vehicles with tinted windows moving in a tight line toward the gate. That was when I remembered the words carved into the wall. The agency knows. They know there was an incident. They are coming to inspect the damage and reset the trap. I am sitting high on the tower now, writing this as fast as I can. The wind is freezing my face, and the SUVs will reach the fence in a few minutes. I am not going to run into the woods. I know what lives in the peaks now. I am not going to fight the men in those black cars either. I know they were ready for this long before I arrived. I am going to climb down, meet them in the bunker, and demand that they close the gate behind them. Because if the words on that generator room wall are true, then there are more of those things above us, hidden in the high clouds. They are smart. They are hungry. They can sound exactly like the people you trust most. And someone has to keep the tower running. Someone has to lock the door when the fog drops. It looks like I am the new guard now,